You're obviously learning your art, you're learning about the technical aspects. You obviously had an eye for it. Tell us about your first job. How did that start?
I contacted every agent in New York City, and literally every single agency rejected me except for one, to do a cigarette campaign for Salem cigarettes, because none of our other photographers could do the job. So I was the last option. And for that job, I got paid $32,500 for the day.
Wow.
And that changed my life, especially because I went back the very next day to work as a waiter, and the manager fired me because he was so jealous that I was actually living my dream. And you know what I said to him? I said to that manager, you know what? You can go.
I'm Garrett Wong, and this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success, and what does winning look like for you? David, thanks so much for being on my podcast today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So audience, if you haven't read the show notes yet, I have David here, we're going to be talking about some other things. You might be wondering, why am I having an artist on the podcast? And this podcast, as I was telling David in pre-show, started out as a real estate podcast. I thought I'd do a little bit of teaching. And then as it started to evolve, as podcasts do, I started to really get into the guests and their origin stories, where they came from, the entrepreneurship of it. And so when David's agent reached out to me, I was trying to see how it could fit, but then his actual journey and how he's overcome these things and his entrepreneurship, I think just inspires anybody who wants to start a business. So that is exactly why we're here today. David, why don't you start out by introducing yourself and giving a little bit of your background?
My name is David Drebin. And I always knew from a very young age that I was destined to do something special with me as my number one audience. So once I found photography in the early 90s, I was obsessed with making photographs. And I felt like it was a very magical way to express myself through making photographs, and it turned into an accidental business. Nothing was planned in any way. And that's been the key to all of my supposed success, but also thinking that you're never actually successful is the key to being successful. To never pat your own shoulder and say, I'm great, and to always feel as though your back is up against the wall and you've got more to prove to yourself every single day.
Okay. So no, I love that, because I think if you just keep trying and you just all of a sudden turn around and you can't even see the start line, that's kind of what you're saying there. So walk us through a little bit. So you fell in love with photography. I mean, is this, like junior high school? Like, when did you really start getting behind the lens?
So basically, I'm Canadian. I live in New York City. When I was in my early 20s, I went to university because I was told I should go to university. I went to the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, and I basically fell asleep in every single class I ever took. There wasn't one class I did not fall asleep in. And looking back, it's because the classes were not embracing my own internal creativity. So I wasn't interested. I was looking to find something that I was truly interested in. So when I found photography, I had a roommate who wanted to be a photographer. And it's the last thing in the world I ever wanted to be, was a creative person or a photographer. Like literally the last thing in the world. But when I saw my roommate at the time bring these 4 photographs home of his coworkers, their souls literally jumped off the page. And it was as though it was a magical thing to see these images with these souls exploding off the actual page. And that was the moment I said to myself, I'm going to be a photographer. I'm going to move to New York City, and I'm going to do my best. And that's all you can do is your best. This was in the early 90s. So then I moved to New York, and I went to Parsons School of Design in New York City.
Nice.
And I just had this crazy angst and drive to become something. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew it was going to be something, because the road to success has so many pitfalls and so many different avenues that you just never know what it's going to be. If you relinquish control and you just focus on your own journey, not who you know, but who you are, then the sky's the limit, my man. Sky's the limit.
Love it. No, I am a very big goal-driven person, bigger purpose, all of that. And I also went through university, grad school, even was in my PhD before I realized I don't even want to do this anymore, right? So you had this big aha moment, not until university, and you just saw these photos and boom, next thing you know, you're deciding to go to New York and Parsons. I mean, what a great place to choose. I mean, very prestigious.
But this is the thing. I've been working as a waiter for many years, and I was very happy being a waiter. I was in my early 20s, and I thought to myself, this is great. I can be a waiter at night. I can make tips every night, and during the day I could make photographs. I was so happy. That is what made me happy. I didn't realize this would be a business. This was all accidental. And then it just turned into a business because people started showing interest in my work, and I didn't even know how to write an invoice. I remember I got my first job and someone said to me, "You need to write us an invoice." And I didn't even know how to do that. So I just kind of figured this all out on the fly. And I started off being a service where people could hire me. I did that for about 10 years. I did some of the biggest campaigns all over the world. Mercedes, Coca-Cola, New York Times, Gatorade, photographing the biggest stars in the world. But I realized that I was being a service at the time, and it was way better to create a product. And that was the big aha moment for me, to create a product and not to be a service. That's when everything changed for me.
Okay, back up a second here. So I think you said accidental business. I totally get that. Walk us through, like you're obviously learning your art, you're learning about the technical aspects. You obviously had an eye for it. When you said service, like you just hung out a shingle, was it word of mouth? Like how did you start? I mean, tell us about your first job. How did that start?
I mean, basically, I was working as a waiter at a restaurant called The Kiosk at 72nd in Lexington. And many people would come in and they would want me to be their waiter. I dealt with so many difficult clients working as a waiter. Some would want their lamb chops medium rare. I bring them medium rare. They say it's well done. I'd say it's medium rare. I would learn how to deal with problems through being a waiter. And all the customers would say, "So what's your dream?" And I would tell them that I'm just making photographs. I started showing some of my customers in the restaurant my photographs. And then someone offered me to photograph their kid's party or some sort of event. And I started doing those events while I was working as a waiter. But my big break was around my 27th birthday, where I contacted every agent in New York City, and literally every single agency rejected me except for one. That one agent had a relationship with an advertising agency in North Carolina to do a cigarette campaign for Salem cigarettes. So the first job I ever did was for Salem cigarettes because none of her other photographers could do the job. So I was the last option. So we closed down 59th Street and Central Park on a night I wasn't working as a waiter. I was making $100 a night as a waiter, and I was very happy with that. And for that job, I got paid $32,500 for the day.
Wow.
And that changed my life, especially because I went back the very next day to work as a waiter, and the manager fired me because he was so jealous that I was actually living my dream. And you know what I said to him? I said to that manager, "You know what? You can go fuck yourself. You're going to be washing toilets someday. You're going to be washing toilets someday." And I'm not joking. I ran into the guy like 15 years later. I said, "Oh, I remember you." I said, "What are you doing right now?" And he said to me, he's literally working as a plumber. And nothing against plumbers in any way, but it was just a metaphor of this guy treating me like shit, and then me telling him, "You're going to be cleaning up shit one day." Nothing against plumbers. It's just a metaphor of the experience itself.
Wow. I can't believe you got fired just because you had a successful job. I mean, one job. That's crazy. Some
I was
people.
fired from I was fired from every single waiter job I ever had because I wouldn't let people treat me like shit. If I gave a customer great service and they didn't give me a tip, I would literally walk outside when there was cash and go, "Excuse me, you left me $1 as a tip. And did you not have good service?" They're like, "The service was great." I said, "Well, you just gave me $1. You can take your dollar back." Then they would go complain to the manager and I would get fired. The best thing that ever happened to me was getting fired from these jobs as a waiter all over the world. Because then you have to pick yourself up off the ground and start again. So I chose a profession, kind of, where I was going to never let myself get fired ever again because I went from job to job to job. And that's when I realized I had to, instead of working for the brand, be the brand. And that's what changed everything for me. Instead of working for the brand, to be the brand. Create a product, market the product, distribute the product, manage manufacturers, manage distribution, and small steps every single day, planting seeds, never looking at the gardens, always planting the seeds. And then all of a sudden, you'll see beautiful gardens from the seeds that you planted. Woo! That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Yeah, no, you should got to bottle that stuff. No, I love the enthusiasm, David. I'm thinking because I think there's a lot of people out there who have services, right? And those are businesses, absolutely. But you just said the B word, brand. And I think a lot of people forget about the brand. And if they don't brand themselves, I mean, I've said this on similar podcasts, you commodify yourself. I mean, what are people going to do to distinguish you from another service except for price? And you don't want to be, they call it the race to the bottom, right? Because now you're advertising on lower price, lower price, lower price. But for you, you've got this brand. So tell us about the first, I mean, you said about 10 years, if I remember correctly, and all of a sudden you had this epiphany. What was the first brand that you just started marketing?
Well, I'm the brand. And I stopped working for other brands because I developed my own signature style. And
Okay.
brands didn't want to hire me anymore because it looked like a David Drebin photograph as opposed to a generic image for Mercedes or a generic image for the New York Times. You could tell it was my own personal style. And I couldn't get any more work anymore. So I realized I have to pivot, and I found galleries to give me exhibitions of my work. And my first real break was I had a show at a gallery in LA called Fahey Klein, and it was a group show in 2004. And Elton John walked in and literally bought half of my images in the show, and very edgy images. And that's when I realized, wait a second, I'm the brand. Elton John bought works that I created as opposed to being hired by a brand to make a generic image that no one will ever care about once the ad comes down. That's it.
So this distinctive style that you started to develop, tell the audience about that.
You just have to develop your own style by constantly dealing with trial and error. And you have to make a lot of bad art before you make good art. You can't be great right out of the gate. The problem with young people today is they want fast money and they want to be great right away. It takes
100%.
time. It takes people talk about 10,000 hours. This is taking me 10,000 days or more. So the key for me has always been being very ambitious, but also very patient.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't have ambitions and patience, right? They're ambitious, but they're not patient, or they're patient and they're not ambitious. It's a combination of ambition and patience that I think is the key for any successful entrepreneur. You also have to have the right mentality. Working for someone else and working for yourself are two very different things. One's on the clock, working for someone else, but when you work for yourself, you're never off the clock. You're just never off the clock. You're always on the clock. From the moment you wake up into the moment you go to sleep, That is the life of an entrepreneur. And I've always seen myself as an entrepreneur, part
Okay.
entrepreneur, part artist. For the world out there, I'm an eccentric, crazy artist. But for myself, I'm a shrewd entrepreneur. But for all you people out there, I'm eccentric and I'm crazy. I'm just an artist. But me with myself, focused, driven, ambitious, and patient over a sustained period of time.
No, I mean, we're here on Canadian Thanksgiving, recording a podcast. I think you're right. I think an entrepreneur, even if they're not quote unquote working, they could be sitting there having a cup of coffee. They're working, right? Their head is constantly going, right? Um, but where do you draw that line? Like, as you were saying in your enthusiasm for the art and your distinctive style, and I'm sure any artists that are tuning into this, where is that balance between being quote unquote true to yourself, your style, sticking to that versus trying to develop and produce something that people actually want to buy?
I don't think about staying true to myself and I don't think about what people want to buy. I think about purpose, mission, and just making it happen without thinking about it too much. If I make images that I want people to buy, they usually don't buy those images. If I make an image and say to myself, I really want to make this, and I don't care if anyone ever buys this ever, that's usually the one that people want to buy, the one that I never thought would ever sell. Life works in reverse. What you think is going to happen doesn't happen. But what you imagine can actually happen because you get what you expect in life. It's just never when you expect it, but you get it. If you expect it in your mind, you may not get it when you want to, but if you work really hard for a really long time, the universe will reward you, and the universe has rewarded me. Since 1994, I'm 30 years into this.
You know, I'm listening to you here, and I would say that if you try to, I'm translating this, okay? If I'm translating what you just said there, I believe that the passion that you put into a project, regardless of not making it for somebody, right? Not creating something that you think somebody's going to want. If you just put your true passion out there, I think that's what you're saying, that there's going to be somebody who's going to see the passion, like you said, souls jumping off the page. Would you agree with that?
I don't like when people are desperate to make sales. And I think the key for me has always been if you want it, great. If you don't want it, fine. There's no desperation. People can smell desperation. Like when
Hmm.
you go to a car dealership, you know what you want, but you can get really turned off by the salesperson because they're pushing you into something that you don't really want. My thinking is always create this relationship between you and the universe and work your ass off for a very long period of time and provide value for other people. Make other people feel great with the way you speak to them, with the art that they see on the walls that's a reflection of themselves. When people look at art, they generally see a reflection of themselves in the art. So I'm thinking what people are longing for. And I make artworks based on what I believe people are missing in their lives and in their souls. Because art can be very soulful and it's just a mirror for who you really are.
Yeah, no, that's really profound. You mentioned entrepreneurship, business, invoicing, truly the school of hard knocks. Tell us and unpack that a little bit on how you even started to learn some of this stuff.
I learned so much by being punched in the face, being treated like shit, by not being paid from so many of the magazines and advertising agencies when I first started. And I learned to survive from people treating me like shit psychologically. And I would not let that happen. I would literally go to the magazine and stand outside the door and say, I'm not leaving until you pay me. You published my images 5 months ago. You haven't paid me. And they would only owe me like $300-400. I was fearless. I was in my 20s and I was willing to die to get paid because I wouldn't let people treat me like shit. You have to teach people how to treat you. And that's been the key to everything for me is belief in myself, being punched in the face repeatedly in the beginning of my career and learning how to teach people how to treat me and not to let people treat me like shit. And when they did treat me like shit, I would salivate because I would think, you know what? This is going to be fun. And I would look at it as entertainment as opposed to getting angry. Because at the end of the day, success often comes from seeing yourself as a winner. But so often you have to lose to win. And I love to lose to win. That's what really turned me on. Losing to win, losing to win.
Yeah, no, I think failure breeds success. I think people who get lucky with a few things and they're successful, eventually, I just don't think they've learned anything. And eventually, it might not be now, 5, 10, 15 years later, they will fall and finally learn. But I think again, I'm translating pride, right? Pride in yourself. What advice would you give to some of these so-called struggling artists, starving artists that are out there that are getting rejected every day?
I would always say never see yourself as a struggling artist or a starving artist, and
Okay.
to embrace rejection. The more you can tolerate and handle rejection, the more successful you will be. That's it. You have to love being rejected. You have to love it. If you can't handle rejection, you're done. Because rejection is the foundation for success for all entrepreneurs. You have to love winning. And when you love winning, rejection doesn't faze you because you know deep down that you're going to win. Maybe not today, but over time. You need to believe in yourself that you're a winner. And if you don't believe that you're a winner and you're waiting for other people to believe in you, you're done. I would say belief in others as opposed to getting others to believe in you is the key to all success.
So, but what do you do if you're an artist out there, you're listening to this and going, yeah, that's great. I've been struggling, I've been painting, I've been whatever the medium is, and it's been 5, 6, 7 years and I could barely make my rent. How do you find the intestinal fortitude to keep going?
I was fine working as a waiter for many, many years. So my thinking was I'm going to work. I had a side hustle, and this was a pipe dream for me that just sort of happened. I think you have to create value for other people and always think about how you can do something for somebody else instead of getting someone else to do something for you. And a lot of artists are always thinking, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? And I'm always thinking, what can I do for you as opposed to what can you do for me? Provide value. And maybe a lot of these artists, they're not that good. And their egos are so big. The key for me has always been I have unbelievable belief in myself, but it's my next image that's going to be better than any image I've ever done. The next image, my future self. I've never pat myself on the back. And that's been the key. I just keep on driving forward and providing value for other people. No ego. I manage egos, but I don't have an ego. That's what I learned way back is, oh, you've got a really big ego. So I'm not going to try to out-ego you. I'm just going to be mindful and use my heart to manage your ego. So much of this is managing other people's egos. And once you become a master at managing your own ego, putting it to the side, and then managing the big egos in front of you, success is on the way for you.
You mentioned value. How do you define providing value in your line of work?
I make limited edition artworks in a very small edition, and I have a very large client list all over the world, and I only make 7 in the large size. So for me, it's just a matter of time before we sell all 7 images. I've done this for a long time. I've done this for over 10,000 days. I'm a bit of an expert on this. If they all sell out, then there's no leverage and I can't sell them anymore. If they don't sell, that's great too, because I still have them available.
Okay, so fear of missing out, you've got scarcity built in there.
I don't really think about fear of missing out. I do think about scarcity and limited edition, definitely. But I don't show the works unless I know that they're good enough, because I am my own harshest critic.
Mm-hmm.
So I am my audience first. Once I believe that they're good enough, I put them out there into the world. And if they sell, great. If they don't, that's okay too. I kind of Buddha-esque approach to all of this. And it's going to happen regardless. I just don't know when it's going to happen. And that's fine because I push every single day since September 1994. I've never stopped for 1 second for 30 years. Not 1 second. And I just do step by step, step by step, step by step every single day. And I love rejection. I love punishing people who reject me. That is my number one motivator, is to punish the people who ever rejected me. That's my motivation. And that's where I want to thank my dad. I haven't talked to my dad in years. I feel a lot of rejection from my dad. And for me, it's almost about punishing my dad for not believing in me. That was a big motivating force for my success. So people who reject me, I salivate at getting them back later. Not in a vindictive way, but in a fun, entertaining way. It's fun for me. Because I believe in myself, man.
No.
And that's the key with artists, is to believe in themselves. Most people don't believe in themselves.
Yeah. When you say punish, I mean, what are we talking about here? In a general sense, I don't mean you're going out and deflating somebody's air in their tires or something, but somebody rejects your art.
I love to take people out who rejected me in my early years and take them for big dinners with beautiful steak and wine, and to thank them for not giving me a chance. That's how I punish people, by treating them like gold.
Okay, so it's not punishing
it. Manipulative.
Yeah.
No, that's punishing. I punish people by treating them like gold later, because then they go, holy shit. They question themselves. They don't question me.
Right.
I punish people by making them question themselves, but not by questioning me.
Okay.
That's why I punish people, by treating them like absolute gold. Yes, that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, beautiful. You mentioned also seeds, sowing the seeds out there, growing gardens. Can we elaborate on that? Because that, to me, is the essence of branding somebody.
Most people want to look at their beautiful gardens, but they're not thinking about the seeds that they planted. I like to plant seeds. I don't watch grass grow. I come back years later, and all of a sudden, the grass is beautiful and the garden is beautiful. And then I continue to plant seeds. I never look at the beautiful gardens, maybe for about 1 second. Well, that garden's beautiful. Time to plant more seeds. Time to plant more. It's like the athlete who wins a championship. The day after, he wants to win another championship. And then the day after, he wants to win another championship. It's just athlete mentality. I've taken athletic mentality of winning to the art business. I've never been in the art world. I've always been in the art business. That's been the key for me. And for all artists, they should think about the art business and not the art world. I'm not looking to be accepted. I already accept myself.
Okay, that's fair. So I guess there could be some artists saying, I mean, I don't want to ramp you up, but I can just picture somebody saying, well, that's great, David, but you're a sellout, you're this, you're that, you're trying to make money off of it. What about your art? What about being true to yourself? But you're just saying, I've got the confidence, I've got the passion. I'm only putting out something for myself. If somebody wants to buy it, great. If not, basically, too bad.
I don't think about the money. I think about winning.
I love that.
If you look at a boxer in the 10th round of a fight, do you think he's thinking about his payday or about knocking the other guy out?
True. Yeah, that's fair.
I think about winning. I'm driven by winning. I take an athlete's approach to art because I always wanted to be an athlete, but I was never good enough to be a professional tennis player or a hockey player or a baseball player. But I took the mentality of wanting to win in sports to the art business. And that's been my approach as an entrepreneur. From an athlete's perspective of winning, I was never driven by the money. I was always driven by winning. Slowly over time.
So what strategies have been most effective? I mean, I know that you've been building these relationships with a lot of prestigious galleries in the world. Maybe enlighten us a little bit.
I have one strategy, which is this: make other people feel great about themselves. That is my number one strategy. It's been my strategy for the last 30 years. It's what my mom taught me. It's what my mom was remembered for. My strategy, once again, is to make other people feel great and to remind them of how great they are. That's my strategy. That's it. That's what everyone's strategy should be, because that's all anyone will ever remember you for when you're gone, is how you made them feel. Too many people have the huge egos and they're thinking about how other people should make them feel. I think you should think about how to make other people feel. I'm good at making myself feel pretty good. I don't need you to compliment me in any way. I want to make you feel great because I already make myself feel great. So let's make this about you. That's my strategy. My number one strategy is providing value to other people and making them feel great.
So if you're a total unknown, you're listening to this, and you want to approach a gallery, what does that conversation look like when you're trying to make other people feel good in your words just now?
I don't think you should ever approach anybody. I think you should build something and get people to approach you. And you got to figure out, especially with all the different social media platforms out there, to build to attract. Don't chase, attract.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key. Don't approach, build to attract. Don't chase. It's like butterflies. It's like saying, what kind of advice would you give to people who love butterflies, who want to catch butterflies? Really? If you walk down the street all day long trying to catch butterflies, you're never going to catch a butterfly. But if you build a beautiful garden, the butterflies will come, you'll put your hand out, and the most beautiful butterfly will land on your hand because you built something to attract as opposed to chasing something.
Love that metaphor. Love it. So commercializing your own work and art, so to speak. I mean, I'm asking a lot of advice questions because for people who are listening, and they don't have to be artists, they could be whatever their business happens to be. So we've talked about brand, we've talked about, planting those little seeds. And I mean, what you're talking about there is probably network and recognition. But when you're talking about maximizing, I mean, even pricing, how do you price something?
I started selling my work for very inexpensive numbers, and it slowly started to price it higher and higher and higher and higher. But I was fine if it didn't sell. It was a perception and a self-respect thing for me. When I call a gallery, or when an artist calls a gallery, when an artist calls a gallery, they're going to say to a gallery, "Hi, I'm great. This is my art." But what if they call the gallery? You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
They're going to call up a gallery and go, "Hi, I'm great. This is my work. I'm great." But what if they contacted someone and said, "You're great," without even mentioning their art in any way? Then the gallery might go, "I wonder who this person is who's telling me I'm great." I think the key to all success is how you make other people feel. In any business, in any relationship, the key to life is so simple. It's all about how you make people feel, because that's all anybody will ever remember about you. Pricing, whatever you think is fair and what the market will bear. It's a lot easier for me now to sell very expensive pieces than my initial price point. It's the craziest thing. When I sell work in my lower price range, which is around $8,000, people want big discounts. They give you a hard time. When we sell works in the $50,000, $75,000 range, people don't even ask for discounts, and they're so grateful that we will let them acquire the piece. It's such a mindfuck. Human nature.
Yeah. Oh, what you're talking about there is just your ideal avatar of a client. I mean, you have to know who you're making the work for, right? And that's what I talked about, commoditizing things and the race to the bottom. So looking back, I'm just looking here at some of the questions I was going to ask you, because being an artist, vulnerability, do you find there's a balance there to trying to express yourself and at the same time trying to switch gears and be okay with that rejection?
I don't think about being rejected. I don't think about vulnerability. I think about providing value for other people and making other people feel great. I've said this over and over and over again, and I watch artists all the time at their openings, at shows, especially during Art Basel in Miami. It's amazing. You watch these artists and they just want to make sales and they just want to make sales. I go to art fairs and I pretend I'm somebody else. I don't even tell them who I am. I can sell my own work by being another person because so much of it's third person validation as opposed to first person bragging. So it's not about vulnerability. It's not about rejection. It's about believing in yourself first and making other people feel great. It's such a simple combination. Believe in yourself first, then provide value to others and make them feel great. That's my strategy, has been for 30 years and will always be until the day I die.
Love it. Just want to transition before we wrap up here. Let's call it the second last question. You have written some books, is that correct?
I haven't written books. I have produced art books with my artworks with a publisher in Germany called Tenois. We've done 9 books together.
Okay, so tell me about that. I mean, whether you've written or you've produced, what was the decision factor in that and how did it help your brand?
The 4 stages of creativity are creativity, or the 4 stages of a brand in the creative space. Creativity, packaging, distribution, and PR. I had the creativity. I wanted to package my creativity by making art books with a world-renowned publisher with global distribution and PR. Creativity, packaging, distribution, and PR.
Okay, and what did it do for your business?
I don't ever really think about my business. I always think about my personal brand and how important it has been to make books. I tell all my galleries, we don't sell books. We give the books away. People ask me all the time, can I buy one of your books? No, my books are not for sale that I have. Yeah, people can buy them on Amazon, but I'm not selling them. And they can buy them in the finest bookstores all over the world. But when I've got possession of my books, I give my books away as gifts. That's the key for my branding, is to make people feel great by giving them books as gifts.
You know, there's a book behind me that you said you liked, Never Lose a Customer Again. And in there, Joey Coleman, the author, talks about, I think the book is called Giftology. And David, you're just touching on that a little bit because there is an art to giving a gift. And it's not necessarily about swag or a logo on a coffee cup. It's about providing value and being memorable. Would you agree with that?
When I think about gifts, I think about my mom who gave gifts to everybody. And she inspired me to just constantly give to people. I give gifts without any expectations, but the universe is watching. That's why I give gifts, to make people feel great and to build my relationship with the universe that is always watching. No expectations, no disappointment.
Yeah, no, I love it. You know, your energy is very infectious. Like I said, here on a holiday Monday, and I feel like I want to go up and running and jog. All jokes aside, last question. I always ask this of every guest, and I'm sure the audience wants to hear what you have to say. David Drebin, this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success, and what does winning look like for you?
Success to me is believing in yourself. And winning to me is about changing other people's lives and making other people feel great.
Love it. Oh, no, you know what? Those words echo exactly what I'm all about. Great way to put a period on it. Yeah, let's cap it there. I don't think we could make it any better. I'm going to obviously I'll contact your agent, get all of your information, throw those into the show notes in case anybody wants to contact you. But thanks so much for a very entertaining and very informative podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.